All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm David Meyer, I'm the Dean here, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to this program for the Women's Leadership Network. I was just saying, chatting before this, that you might not feel it in the room at this moment, but we are coming up on the last day of classes is a week from today, so just if you're feeling a little bit of anxiety in the building as you walk in, that's part of the background context, but we're very excited. Relates to wellness in a way, about the topic of the importance for students and lawyers as well, of course. But it's a much broader topic than that, of course, in terms of the many dimensions of the way in which law relates to interests of women's health and wellness. This is. I will hand off to Mika Bondi very shortly to introduce the panel and to get us underway. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge the significance of the Women's Leadership Network to Brooklyn Law School. And it's something that has been a labor of love and creativity for the alumni who have partnered with us in launching it and sustaining it and growing it over time. And it plays an important role not only in programming like this to enrich our community, both for students at the school and faculty and alumni, but also to support students through scholarship support of our students. So we're deeply grateful for all of you for being here and being part of the network and helping us to fulfill these very important aspects of our mission. I will say, in just closing this portion before handing off to Mika, just to acknowledge that relating to those that mission and the support of our students through scholarships and other means, I would be a very poor dean if I did not acknowledge that today is Giving Day for Brooklyn Law School, and this day is all about participation, just taking part in supporting the school and expanding the number of our alumni and other friends who are helping us to advance and to serve our students and others in the community who are touched by the work that goes on here through clinics or through our pro bono service or a million other things. And so this year we're off to a rousing, we have great momentum in Giving Day, and we are, the last I saw, over I think 103 donors so far, and have and over $100,000 raised, and it's not really less about the dollars number and more about the number of donors who participate in the day. But with just to acknowledge that the last I heard, every 50 donors we're unlocking another $25,000 matching gift, and last I heard we were one donor short of unlocking one of those. So so hope whatever our theme is, asking you to consider what is your why for giving, your motivation in supporting Brooklyn Law School in whatever ways you do. And so whether that's the Women's Leadership Network or the support for our students or in 1,000 other ways, we'll be always grateful for your continued support of the school, including being here tonight. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mika to get us underway.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mika Bondi. I'm chair of the Women's Leadership Circle, which is the steering committee for the Women's Leadership Network. And the Women's Leadership Network is open to everyone that is a Brooklyn Law School alum. And we have three parts of our mission. The first is to celebrate the power of leadership. And that is both celebrating the achievements of our alumni, but also learning from their skills and their experiences, and to be inspired by their achievements so that we keep going. The second is the power of community. We have an incredible steering committee comprised of over 24 women, and I consider them all great colleagues and friends, and we put on great programming, and this is part of it, and we can draw from the thought leadership from all the panelists here and the academic wherewithal of our professors. And the third piece of it is philanthropy. Of course, part of the Women's Leadership Circle is to raise money for the school. But we also are really proud that we've been able to endow our scholarship. So we're on to our 7th recipient. I might have lost track of that. But every year we pick a female student of incredible caliber who exemplifies some of the values that I just described and give them a little boost of $1,500. Of course, we would love to give more, but that's all part of Giving Day and giving back to the school. So we hope you do try to give today and to continue to be engaged with the school. It's an incredible place of thought leadership and community, and I've derived a lot of fun and pleasure from it. So thank you very much for being here. So I am super excited about this panel. I think women's health and law, and both healthcare, practicing in health law, but also the whole notion of wellness, and there's a lot of business around wellness as well. But we all as attorneys know that wellness is a very important part of continuing and being able to succeed and have a fulfilling life. So I'm excited to hear what all of these panelists have to say, but I'm going to just introduce Karen Porter, who is Associate Dean for Academic Student Success, also Associate Professor of Clinical Law, and very impressively, the Executive Director of Brooklyn Law School's Center for Health, Science, and Public Policy. And she also runs Brooklyn Law School's health law externship, and I think that is one of the things that Brooklyn is so good at, is giving you on-the-ground practical experience of what it means to practice law. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Porter, and she will introduce and moderate this excellent panel. So thank you for being here.
Well, good evening and welcome to the law school. Thank you, Dean Meyer. Thank you, Mika, for this wonderful introduction. And thank you, I think, especially to the Women's Leadership Network and the Women's Leadership Circle for being able to put on programs like this. It's always exciting. This is one of many that I have been involved in one way or another, and every program has been more exciting, and interesting, and really kind of impactful to our students in that they get to see just a broad range of opportunities, and they get to be inspired by women who are pursuing a variety of career opportunities, but who are all leaders in their field. And that, I think, is something that is sort of very special. And I think wonderful that we're able to sort of provide that opportunity to students. So we're going to start off the panel by really having each person introduce themselves by telling us a little bit about their backgrounds and what inspired them to go into healthcare and the wellness space. So I'm going to give the opportunity to each person. Maybe Shilpa, we'll start with you and then go down the line.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Shilpa Patel. I'm a graduate of Brooklyn Law School in 2006. I am, my background, I'm currently the chief legal officer at a company called Shields, which is a specialty pharmacy company that was part of the Walgreens portfolio companies, recently taken private, spun out. I've been there for 9 months, but prior to that, I was at a company called Kind Body, which I helped found, which is a women's health and fertility company. And prior to that, I've been in the healthcare startup space for a while. I think we're going to go over our path in a little bit, but just background of kind of my interest in health law. I was a participant in Karen's health law externship program in, I think, 2005. And I externed at New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. It was a wonderful experience. And my interest in health law, truthfully, probably is because I am Indian and my entire family they are all doctors, and I decided not to be a doctor and went to law school and then decided that I should probably still stay on the path of healthcare.
You have something to talk about at home.
Right, and not malpractice because they would be upset.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eleni Kafinas, and when I walked through the doors, the guy at the lobby said, "You're going to take an elevator over there. Have you been here before?" And I said, "Yeah, 40 years ago when I graduated from this law school." So it's like kind of blows my mind. But I walked out of this building and into the job that I still have 40 years later. So I am where I started, which is a personal injury law firm, and I had nothing to do with medical malpractice at the time, nor did I want to. I enjoyed what I was doing. My trial career was just taking off. But the guy who was running medical malpractice for many years left, and the senior partner came to me, Bob Sullivan, still the senior partner, and I was 33. And the firm was desperate in fairness, but it said, would like you to head the medical malpractice department, of which I knew nothing about. And I didn't want to do it because I liked what I did. And he said one thing that made me do it. He said, you know, there's only one other woman that does this. That intrigued me. And there's still that woman and me, and there's not that many others that do it on the plaintiff side. But when he said that, I said, you know, there might be a place for me here where I can, do something different. So this is a wellness lecture or forum or conversation, and I deal, I guess, in sickness because I am a medical malpractice lawyer, and I look at women all day long who are fighting many things. A lot of it is various stages of cancer. And I'm thinking, Shilpa can talk about wellness, Nicole can talk about wellness, and I can talk about wellness because through the sickness, you find your own wellness. You find your strength that maybe you didn't even think you had. And that's what I see in all these women I represent all these years. I don't see the sickness, I see the wellness. And I think that's where I can fit into this conversation.
Yeah, I love that point, and it makes valid sense. I am Nicole Foley, so I'm an '08 grad, and I took a little bit of a different route to health and wellness. So when I graduated from Brooklyn Law, pretty standard, right? I joined a law firm, I worked at Kramer Levin, did white-collar criminal defense work, and ended up taking a little bit of a pivot. So the moment that it wasn't the moment that I actually transitioned, but the moment my transition began into health and wellness, I was working on a white-collar trial in the Southern District, a tax fraud case, and for 5 straight months, I did not have a day off of work. 7 days a week, 12 to 16-hour days, 5 straight months. And, it takes a toll. But, by the end of the trial, which our client was the only defendant out of 5 to be acquitted on all counts, so rightly so. But by the end of the trial, the firm was great. They told me, take as much time as you need, come back when you're ready, don't even say anything, just come back when you're ready. So it was quiet. I didn't go into the office. And that's when I really noticed that something was wrong, right? Some pretty big signs. So I was opening my mouth up and down. Usually you open your mouth, it goes up and down. Mine went to the side. I had really bad TMJ. I had an exhaustion that is hard to explain. Even doing normal errands, I couldn't do. I lived on Skirmahorn Street. I couldn't go down to Brooklyn Fair. I was so exhausted. I was gaining weight. All of these different signs. I knew something was wrong. I thought it was burnout. So I was like, I have burnout. I need to rest. I need to relax. I need to meditate. I need to do more yoga. Came back to the firm about 2 weeks later. Still wasn't better. Still things were going wrong. Started to do a lot more research. I knew something more serious was going on. Eventually, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, and I came to learn that really chronic stress can manifest in a lot of different ways. Chronic stress can manifest in diabetes, heart conditions. For me, it manifested as an autoimmune condition. And it took me a number of years before I left the law and fully transitioned into health and wellness, but I knew from that moment that things were going to be different, that there was something I needed to do to really work on myself. And I spent over a decade really researching nervous system regulation, researching kind of body-based practices to really not just kind of fix, not just manage stress, but really to heal from a real nervous system regulation point. So it took me about 7 years before I transitioned out, and I think we'll get into that shortly.
Thank you each for that interesting introduction. So I think we're going to move on and really sort of just talk a little bit about some of the most pressing challenges that each of you sort of see women facing in the healthcare wellness space right now.
And I would say from my perspective, what I do, it's women getting dismissed. I read, medical records, hospital records for a living, and I don't criticize anybody on any medication, but almost you can't find somebody who isn't, and it's and having nothing to do with the malpractice. Before they were ever malpracticed on, there's anti-anxiety, antidepressant, there's all kinds of, women make complaints and doctors put them on antidepressants, and it's just the way of it. And I think sometimes we think, oh, well, that's the solution, take this pill. But it isn't. And then when they get sick, like get cancer, they find this strength that you don't see in the prior history of their medical records. They still sometimes get dismissed. The bigness of cancer, there's a bigness also of being misdiagnosed, whether it's somebody that, they say you're too young, don't worry, or you don't have a family history, don't worry, or those kinds of things is also a type of dismissal. And I do some lecturing to try to educate women on how to just be, proactive for yourself. I come from a generation of, if you go for a test and you don't get a result, we were the no news is good news generation. We didn't question anything. Nobody's looking for trouble. And you guys can't live in that world anymore, right? You have to, be proactive for your own health. Get your own results. Ask questions. Get second opinions. All the things, and it will empower you. And for the women who do get sick, it's amazing that the power mentally that they have, and the body is, breaking down. The mind is going crazy in the other direction. And so there is a wellness, there is a way to be well, and it's a mind thing. When your body is failing a little bit, your mind can pick up the slack. It's real. And I've had doctors testify at trials that those who have a positive mental attitude actually do better physically. And I will always ask all my clients, like, who's going to win? And they're like, nobody ever says, like, cancer's going to win, or it's always them, because there is a fight there. So that's, to me, I deal with women who have big problems, but they are inspiring to me, and it's kind of what keeps me going. We end up, even though I'm like their lawyer to compensate them, and they're fighting for their life, our fights merge. And somehow knowing someone else is fighting for them gives them more of a fight also. So if there's someone in your family or somebody and somebody who's struggling, just like take a step back and maybe say something good about they look good, or they're inspiring, or some mental thing that you can see that they're kind of rising above something horrible.
So, Lenny, it sounds like in your practice that you show up differently, and the women show up differently than they might outside of it. Could you say a little bit more about that? It's a little
social work for me, and I tell even my paralegal and my young associates, like, we are part social workers. We have to be so kind. So we sent a letter and was like, so happy your chemo ended, or you just look so nice, or we're rooting for you, our thoughts are with you. Like, there's a personal thing so that you can have somebody feel comfortable through a really rough situation. And I think it feels good to know somebody is fighting for you while you are fighting for you, and kind of social worker / cheerleader. But there is a big wellness component that comes out, even in treatments now. There's a lot of, you spoke about yoga, but there's a lot of that, of can I meditate? Can I do yoga? What can I do physically, movement-wise, and mentally to make myself feel better? It's a whole thing now, and it's good. So.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I love what Elaine just said, because there is a really deep connection, that mind-body connection. It really goes very deeply. When I left the law, I ended up founding my own health coaching company where I mostly work on nervous system regulation, but I also partnered and joined with a company called Maven Clinic, which is the largest women's and family health telehealth platform in the world. And it really focuses on, as part of our work, I really help them identify and develop a fertility coaching program where we work with women all the way from, preconception all the way from those undergoing fertility treatments to really optimize their chances of success. And one of the challenges that I see in my role, one of the biggest challenges for women in health and wellness today is that knowledge action gap, right? We all know what to do. We have AI. We can have a meal plan. We can have an exercise routine in a second. But we're not doing it, right? We're not doing all of the things. We know we need to sleep. We know we need to eat better. We know we need to exercise 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week. But to actually incorporate that into our busy lives, into the million other things and responsibilities that we have, and that is kind of where coaching comes into play. It is really more about it is about behavior design. It is about how to take these things that we all know that we're supposed to be doing and how to break them down into small, actionable, actually reasonable things that we can incorporate it into our own routines and daily lives. How can we build that consistency? So for me, it's really, we all know what to do, but that really challenge is how do we actually get ourselves to do it?
Can I ask you, what is the answer? What is an answer to that? No, but everybody
I
knows
love
what
it.
we're supposed to do. Mostly we don't. So why not?
Yeah,
And how do you do it?
There's a million reasons, and I think
Give us
there's
a couple.
motivation reasons. But what we really need to do is, we all think that we need to be perfect. I need to run the marathon. I need to eat perfectly, 5 days a week. It's about small, actionable, measurable steps. Setting actual clear things that you're going to do. It's not about being perfect. It's about what is one step in the right direction, and how do I start doing that consistently? How do I start entering that into my routine? And you build from there. But you have to start small before you climb the mountain.
I think this panel is so interesting because we're all coming from different perspectives. And my immediate thought went to, I previously founded and helped to build a company similar to Maven called Kindbody, which is also a fertility company that operates a network of fertility clinics and manages benefits for employers. And then prior to that, I was at a mental health startup called Quartet, and at that time it was a startup, an insurance startup called Oscar that's now a full-blown insurance company. But what my takeaway or my response to that was going to be that since I got into the kind of healthcare startup, healthcare tech world, the trouble that women face is the lack of funding in women's health. And when I first got involved, when we were launching Kindbody, I think at that time, 1% of venture capital funding went to women's health. Today, it's 5%, and that's since 2018, so it's made a significant jump. And today, at that time, maybe 0.25% funding went into women's health company led by women. Today, 2% of that 5% goes to companies led by women, and so there's change happening, but it's slow, and that's one of I think the unlock to more funding in women's health is for companies to be successful. So Maven, for example, to have a successful exit, and other companies to have a successful exit, so that there's more money put into this space. There's also separately a whole, in the healthcare ecosystem, it all comes back to reimbursement and how much an insurance company is going to pay. And for women's health care in general, just general women's primary care, the reimbursement is really low. And there's not reimbursement codes today for endometriosis and PCOS and certain conditions that only women have. So I'm on a personal mission to change that. But the other part of it is that funding for research in women's healthcare is it's crazy. I think we all know that most drugs and protocols have been developed based off of men, and then the dosage is toned down because women are little men, and that obviously doesn't make sense. Our biology and our physiology is completely different. And that is also changing. There's more development in women and associated drugs and protocol, and it will change. And I think that we're at an interesting time, because if traditional healthcare has not focused on women per se, but there are a lot of startups out there that are focusing on menopause, on endometriosis, on PCOS, on hormonal health, and I'm so excited about all of them and supportive of all of them, because the more that they kind of are out there in the mix and get, and also consumers, we are all consumers. We learn about these companies through social media now, and we are so much better educated, and I think we can speak to kind of the level of education of egg freezing and IVF, for example, that you can get on your own today that you couldn't get 5 years ago is phenomenal. And that level of self-education, while there's a argument that, people are becoming their own doctors, you're also becoming your own advocate, and I think that's really helpful.
So let me just ask, just to follow up on that, Shilpa, and also maybe to invite Eleni into the conversation, because you're sort of speaking about it from the perspective of what might now be possible for women. And it's the flip side of where Eleni sort of started, right, the conversation. And I just sort of wonder how, even in that frame, what are the pitfalls for women and what are the opportunities?
I think I'll start with the opportunities. there are a lot of, outside of legal per se, there are a lot of opportunities for women to become more involved in their own personal health care, to work in women's health focused businesses, to put any time towards women's health businesses, there's a lot that women can do and opportunities to kind of change the platform. I think the pitfalls, and I'm going to speak to pitfalls from a business perspective, because the pitfalls today is truly the lack of funding. And I've done fundraising rounds across from, in Silicon Valley and in New York, and virtually every venture capital fund that is not a female-focused fund, their response is, well, we already have a women's health company in our portfolio. Yeah, but your women's health company is let me think of something that's totally different than fertility. Yeah, a menopause company. They're focusing on two different segments that potentially also you can find alignment with these two companies and you can actually be helpful to them. But I think that hasn't changed. The kind of, I have a women's health portfolio company and we're good with that.
We've checked it off.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's more of a check the box than, and it's changing. I mean, I think that there are more women that are coming up in these funds, and private equity also. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, the most lucrative women's health segment is fertility today, and so private equity is very invested in fertility. I think that, and that's part of my point, is once there is as things are getting unlocked, so like OBGYN, there's more, where the money goes will follow advancement, or advancement will follow.
Are there any current students here tonight? There are. Okay, so are you guys graduating soon? Okay. Oh, well, congratulations. And you may or may not know what you want to do. I always felt like I wanted to be a trial lawyer. There weren't that many women then. There are more women now, but there are a lot of women on the defense side, which is fine. And the defense side is more of sort of a 9 to 5, that they respond to whatever the plaintiff side does, at least if you're in my field. But if you do what I do on the plaintiff side, it's really a career, not a job, and it doesn't go away from you. So you think about it, I heard that Paul McCartney went to sleep and woke up with the words to yesterday. And I thought, well, if Paul McCartney can do that, I can do something like that. And I go to sleep. This is a true story. My daughter asked me to solve problems. She goes, Mom, sleep on it, because she knows, I'm thinking all night long. And sometimes I'll go to sleep and wake up with, what my opening statement will be for trial, or the makings of it, or the beginning of it. And there is that risk of the burnout thing, but you can't teach it in law school either, what would make you successful, and that's passion. And you have to have, whatever the career field is, whether you stay in law like I did, whether you leave law and go, adjacent, as they say, and go into another field, start your own businesses. It's the passion that makes you better than the next guy. And you have to have that. You can develop it if it all starts out as fear, right? This is the great unknown. I'm going to go to court. I'm going to argue. I'm going to do something. But I relied very young on a natural passion that I had, that I still have, and it got me through a lot of not knowing of things, because you kind of sound like you do, even if not really so sure. And so for those of you who are students, I say it's kind of nice even for me to see someone. One is 06, one is 08. I feel like they graduated yesterday compared to me, but they've branched off and opened businesses, and I come from a family of lawyers. And my older sister's a lawyer, my younger sister's a lawyer, my father was a judge, and the younger one wanted to be a dancer. This was her thing. And my father said, you can be a dancer after you get your law degree. Because it was the only option. We didn't know you could be a teacher, a plumber, and we just had to go to law school. But I'm an advocate of it. And I think it's great because it really, no matter what field you end up in, it just teaches you how to think and problem solve. And so those of you who are graduating in a month or in a year or whatever, we wish you everything. We came from here, so you'll have, it's just a great background to figure it out. And I think there's just more opportunity for you now. You're not going to be like, it's kind of still a male-dominated thing, but there's a lot of women, and I always found it to be a benefit. I always found it like I could set myself apart a little bit. I always found that maybe sometimes older men adversaries never knew what to do with me. So, you don't have my speech is about you don't have to try to be like the guy that sits next to you in class. Your benefit is to not be that.
I was going to add on
my pep talk.
Add on to that. That also, I was thinking when I was walking in here and sitting in the classroom, I had I knew I wanted to go into healthcare law. I didn't know what that meant, and I took all the classes. I did the externship, and my first job was at a healthcare-focused law firm based in Long Island, Garfunkel Wild, and then I moved from there to Foley and Lardner and their corporate healthcare practice. And it's one of the things that I remember is I didn't know what the difference between corporate law and litigation, first of all, in law school. I learned it in a law firm. I really had no idea what exactly I wanted to do. And I think once you start, you pretty quickly figure out, I don't want to do this per se. And the other thing I'm just counting it here. I've worked at 7 different companies or firms since I graduated, and I think that is much more of the norm of moving around, and you can move around to move up, and not being kind of scared of that, and kind of figuring out where you want to go. And my last thing is maintaining your network, because I think we were taught this in law school is develop a network, reach out to alums. It will help you. And I always felt kind of weird, I'm gonna cold. At that time, you could email them, or it was more call them, which felt really weird. But I think, especially with LinkedIn, you can reach out. People respond. I will respond. It's such a helpful tool, and I think, and maintaining those relationships, just checking in from time to time and saying, hey, how are you? This is what I'm doing. It will follow you, because the opportunities arise in the weirdest places or the strangest circumstances.
Nicole, feel free either to sort of tell us a little bit about what you think the opportunities or pitfalls might be for women and for the law related to some of the issues that are out there facing women, or to sort of say a little bit more about just sort of your journey.
Yeah, beautiful. I can touch on both a little bit. I would kind of reiterate the same thing. When I graduated from law school, I also didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to do. I was drawn towards litigation. I was drawn towards white collar work because I found it intellectually stimulating. I found it fun. I loved that every new case I was learning something completely new. And I really think that following that passion is so key. As both of these women were saying, following your passion, really being drawn on you. I was speaking with others today earlier, like talking about your strengths and really following those strengths. And I think what's really important is being aware of, that passion, those strengths. One of the first things that, when I was thinking about switching careers, something that came up for me really deeply was really thinking about what are my values? What are those core values, and trying to live out those values in what I do day to day. And for me, those, they can change over time, but they were really autonomy, well-being, and community were some of my core values, and really wanting to make sure that I could live those out in the work that I was doing on a day-to-day basis. It might be financial, and that could be, caring for your family. That is a valid, value to hold. There can be a lot of different values, but you can get really clear on what your values are, and if you can institute those in the work that you do every day, I think that's one of the most important things. And there are online ways to go about that. There are books around values and strengths, and I think that that is one of, when you're thinking about what you want to do with your career and your life, getting really core on like what your key values are is going to be a beautiful starting point.
Nicole made me think of something. It's an interesting thing if you're a wife and a mother and a lawyer, and we're supposed to be able to like have it all, right? And I have to tell you, having it all is like the most exhausting, kind of somewhat unrealistic thing to do, because I grew up that way. Oh, I can do everything. I can do it all, and I did, but at a cost that I don't think the younger people have to do. I think, some of you, the generation gets a bad rap, like they want everything, but they don't want to work for it. I get that, but there's some truth in what the newer generations want, meaning this so-called balance thing, right? I didn't have any, maybe some of the people more closer to my age didn't have any balance either, but I think that life is more on your terms now. I just think the world has shifted, and largely post-COVID. I mean, I have the most conservative firm ever, but we have like remote Fridays, and that's a big deal for a lot of the commuters or a lot of the moms, or just to, not have it, just have that one extra day. And that's like a little thing. I think for the world has changed a bit. Maybe even in my firm, our own like maternity leave policy, first time ever in the history of the firm, which is something I fought for. Like on month 4, you can get full pay and work from home. It's like a transition month back into the office. I didn't have a transition minute, but I understand the benefit of that. And so I do think the world is changing. Maybe it's a little women-led, but maybe men have also caught on. So for the younger ones here that are going to be starting in their career, it's like what Nicole's line of work is. I think in my day, we didn't think about our own wellness. Like what? Wellness wasn't a word, really. It wasn't a phenomenon like it is now. And I think it's really important. And I think it's important to take care of yourself while you're taking care of the whole world. And it's a mindset that I think will serve everybody well from the health and wellness perspective of your career and your home life. And it's not going to be perfect, but giving attention to the things that, like Nicole was talking about, it's going to make you less cranky. It's going to make you better at everything. So there is a shift, which I see, which I think is great.
I want to just ask each of you about mentorship and how mentorship, and I say if because I guess you're supposed to, but I can't imagine mentorship not really playing a role in your own career path and in the ability to sort of feel like you could go after something. Nicole, for example, right, you made this huge change, right? Was that something that you went out and sort of just decided to do on your own, or did you have somebody out there, right, who could help you sort of sort through that?
Yeah, I think mentorship is something that carries us through all aspects of our life. I think it's really key. I definitely, a lot of my mentorship experiences were not the standard, find someone senior, go out to coffee, absorb their wisdom. It looked different. I definitely had, I'm thinking back to Kramer Levin, there was the general counsel there at the time, Charlotte Fishman was one of my deep mentors. We had a very, very close connection. She really supported me through a lot of things. And when I was making the decision to leave the law, she really challenged me on it. You know, she really wanted me to make sure that I was making the right decision for me. And I think having a good mentor is someone not just to impart kind of wisdom, but someone who's going to challenge you and make you think about things in a really different way. And so I found a lot of value in that, and I really did think through it. And I was more solidified in my own decision having that experience, being kind of challenged on it a little bit, like asked to think through these different concepts. So I think that, you know, mentorship can look, you know, pretty standard like that, but it can also come from really unexpected places. You know, it doesn't have to be someone older than you. It doesn't have to be someone in your same field. It doesn't have to be someone you've ever met in real life. You know, I have reached out, you know, people who I've really, you know, learned a lot from their podcasts. I have reached out to them and connected with them and, you know, developed a relationship with them. So I think that when it comes to mentorship, don't limit yourself in what you're looking for in that role. You really, you know, there are mentors all around us. There are mentors in this room. And I think that, you know, go out and seek a lot of different mentorship opportunities.
Shilpa?
I'm going to double down on the networking piece. I think there's so much value in attending different things like this, putting yourself out there, introducing yourself to people. You can establish like a bond with somebody over something random, like, oh, I like that coffee shop too, or that's my favorite restaurant, or whatever it is, and then just keeping in touch with them, because, like I said, I have the way that network has kind of helped me and throughout my career, and kind of new opportunities have come to me and continue to come to me because of network is really incredible, and I so strongly believe in it and recommend it. And then the other thing on mentorship is your peers. One of my do you still have to sit in alphabetical order your first? You don't? Okay. Well, one of my best friends from law school, her last name was Paul, my last name is Patel. We had to sit next to each other in all of our classes. We became really good friends. We have had totally different career tracks. She was a U.S. attorney and now started her own investigations firm. Like what we do on our day-to-day is so completely different, but professionally, we are mentors to each other, or like peer mentors to each other. And it's so invaluable to just nurture those relationships. And so that's another thing I'd recommend.
In some ways, I think that mentorship is really about learning, right? Yeah. And about keeping that kind of growth mindset sort of there and present. And so I really, really agree in many ways, Nicole, with what you've said, and Shilpa with what you've said. And I almost want to open it up to sort of say, when I speak to students, I know that they are learning from each other, right? And in a classroom where people get to know each other and where it's not sort of intimidating, maybe in that seminar or whatever, the opportunity to learn from somebody else who's sitting right next to you, I think is so powerful. As a mom, right, I think I am a mentor too, at least I hope, right, that my own sort of children sort of think of that. And so I think I
would see your children as mentors too.
Yes, exactly.
They teach
right.
us so much.
Well, I lean on them for a lot. So yes, yeah, exactly. I just sort of think it goes many, many, sort of ways. And I think that was part of the point that you were making earlier, Delaney.
I'd probably go overboard doing it, and I think it's because I didn't really have it. So I have a lot of young, the boys happen to be women, and our leaders are women. But I give them a lot, and I think it's a little bit motherly, maybe a little bit. I really want them to see a little bit, what you did this for me, and I naturally really do want to do it for someone else. And I see them kind of taking pride in their work because they want to. I give them a lot, and so I think they want to show that they're worth a lot. And so I think that when you have a strong mentor, it really does motivate you to be better, to want to make them proud. And I'm proud of them. And there were some guys older than me when I was younger, starting out, that were trying cases, and they were encouraging me. And I did learn from them. So I don't want to say that I didn't have anyone, but I didn't have any women to follow. The woman friend that when I went in front of you want to run the other direction. I never had that. And so you don't need it, but it's great to have. And it is, like you both said, it's very reciprocal thing. you know, I mean, you can learn from anyone. Sometimes I hear something and I'll just incorporate it into something I need to know, you know, that somebody else said, and I know that mentorship is paying attention. You know, it's just like paying attention to everything. And the networking is big. Because you can be the most talented lawyer in the world. If you don't know how to be a business, then your talent is meaningless. So that the networking, and yes, maybe from your generation, even maybe you can speak, you know, be alone for 1 second, just a little bit to how would somebody do that now? Success of somebody very young or coming out of school, what would they do?
I think using LinkedIn as a tool and messaging people, attending things like this, and just introducing yourself to people. You know, using social media in like a respectful way, obviously, but you know, I think commenting or reaching out to somebody and saying I love what you're doing. All of this.
Little guts.
Yeah, it does,
takes a
and it feels weird. That's what I was trying to convey before, because I remember feeling so awkward about it and feeling like I'm not a shy person and feeling shy about reaching out to people, or somebody would be like, oh, you should reach out to this person. She's doing whatever. And it wasn't even what I was interested in, but it was just to make a connection. And this person was a lawyer at, whatever law firm. But it all helps. And you never know who knows who or who can help you. And people, and I think if you think that you're intruding on their time, you're not. I mean, writing a quick response back is not intrusive.
So I think at this point I want to open it up to the audience for questions. We didn't get to all the questions that I would have liked to have asked each of the panelists. Some of those questions might have lent more on some of the individual kind of work that they did in their field, but I think it probably would be more interesting to hear what you're interested in learning from them. So I just invite you to, stand up, and I think we have a mic or two, right? So if you would speak into the mic just so that everybody can hear, that would be great. But I invite you to ask questions.
I have a comment.
Thank you, Ultra.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Ralph, and thank you so much for being here. So I started my law career during the pandemic, and was at a big law firm, and was working, 15 to 20 hours a day, 6 days a week. I was the only person off on Sundays, and I remember having that moment probably 6 weeks in, thinking, is this sustainable? Like, what can I be doing? And so I started working out. Like, I hadn't been working out before as much, because I was hit by a car in law school, but that's another story. But like, I ended up just started working out. And so I guess my comment here is turning into a question. How did you kind of manage your careers in a way that made it more sustainable for you, knowing that it was going to be difficult, that there are these different issues that you were just going to have to deal with because that was just the nature of things, right? Like, what did you do to sustain yourself, and what are you doing now to improve that sustainability?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And, exercise is a good thing, right? Not just because of the health benefits, but actually, if we think about our nervous system, we've got the sympathetic side, that fight flight. We've got the parasympathetic, our rest, relaxation, kind of the ventral vagal side of our nervous system. Our nervous system is built to protect us. It is designed evolutionally to notice threats and notice signs of safety. So it is constantly scanning the environment, scanning internal signs for these different signs. And when the scale tips, right, a little bit more signs of threat, we get elevated into this fight flight, into this sympathetic response. So our cortisol raises, and we get these physical responses in our body, right? Our blood sugar rises, we get muscle tension to allow us to respond to the threat. We get all of these different bodily responses, and they are meant because most of our threats historically were more physical. So when you exercise, you're actually processing a lot of that thing that's happening in your body. So that is a really good way to do it. It doesn't have to be intense exercise. Even a walk can be really helpful to kind of calm the nervous system. But I think the most important thing is the awareness. What are your personal signs? What are those first whispers that your body is telling you that your nervous system is a little out of whack? And they're different for every person, but there's, some pretty common ones, holding tension in our body, shoulders raised. I hold tension in my jaw. Some people get, gut issues. There are, breath. Some people hold their breath, or they breathe really shallowly. So the more that you can get in touch with, what are those initial signs in your body, the more you can bring in some tools to kind of regulate that. And I can definitely talk about different tools that are really valuable there. Movement is really valuable. Breath, the way we use our breath is one of the more important ways that we can regulate our nervous system. If our inhalation is connected to our sympathetic nervous system, so that fight flight. You might notice, athletes or different people, before they go into a game, they're doing a lot of, they're amping up their fight flight so that they can respond physically. Our exhalation, that's connected to our parasympathetic, that rest and relaxation. So when we want to use our breath to kind of calm down our nervous system, we really want to elongate our exhalations as much as possible. There's different techniques, straw breathing, physiological sighing, that can help us, practice that and elongate that. That's easy in a pinch. There is cold water, even just like an ice pack. So an ice pack on the face, that helps signal our mammalian dive reflex, which, when you dive into the water, your heart rate slows, your breathing is slowing, so you really want to, that can be I actually have a handout, a little QR code I can share that has a lot of different techniques. But what we're really trying to do is tip that balance, so we're sending our nervous system more signs of safety. And it's in little bits, day by day. We can get stuck in this more mobilized state. And we really want to say, okay, in this moment, what are little things that are sending me signs of safety? And it could be social connection. Going to talk to someone in the office, someone that makes you laugh. That's a really, really, really great way to regulate your nervous system. Again, breath work, movement, stretching. Even in the office, just stretching is a really great way to do it. We really want to bring in more of these tools, but the most important thing is the awareness. So I definitely, I use a rain practice where we get really. Rain practice is, it's a good way that we can practice regularly to do a nervous system check-in, where we really get to know our bodily signs. So RAIN is an acronym. The R is recognize, A, allow, I, investigate, N is for nurture. So recognize. You just want to name what that primary emotion is for you in the moment. Is it anxiety? Is it boredom? Is it frustration? Just by naming it, we're going to kind of call it out. So we want to identify and name. Second, allow. A lot of times when you're, busy, when we're just kind of pushing through, we really ignore these emotions that are coming up for us. We kind of push through, we get everything done. So we really don't want to immediately fix them, we don't want to push it away. So we want to just allow that feeling to be there. It's okay that I'm feeling anxiety in this moment. It's all right to feel that. We don't want to kind of just push it away because it's going to bubble up. It's like a kettle on the teapot, right? On the stove, the kettle is boiling over. If we ignore that, it's going to explode. And it's going to come out in different ways. It could come out in different health conditions, like autoimmunity for myself. So allow it to be there. It is okay to have that emotion. I is investigate. That's when you're kind of turning inward. What are those bodily signals that my body is giving me? If it's anxiety, what does anxiety feel like in my body right now? Am I holding tension anywhere? Am I holding my breath? What is the quality of my breath? And then the nurture, that's when you're going to bring in the tools. So that could be breath work, that could be a little movement, it could be social connection. The more you practice that, and I'd like to make sure that, if you practice that on a daily basis, you can bring it in quickly when you need it in a pinch, when those, you're feeling stuck in that kind of fight-flight mode. So nervous system regulation begins with awareness, and I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you so much for that, Nicole. Go ahead.
Because I knew about none of this. Really, but I do now. So it's never too late to learn. Like you're asking, how do you do it? I plowed through, and I'm not recommending that. Just I was so career driven. I didn't know I was supposed to go home and breathe. I didn't know any of it. But I'll tell you what, now, my husband's okay with this, I sleep with this like vibration music. It's fabulous. It's like, well, it hurts, I don't know what it is, but you probably know. And weird vibration, and it vibrates with you, or whatever it actually does. It's very calming. So I've gotten with the program. I didn't start out that way, and I understand now what she's saying. But if somebody told me this some decades ago, I would have laughed, because I would have said, "What is she talking about? Who has time to sit and breathe and rain and all the things?"
I'm telling you, it takes 5
But
minutes.
I-
5
I-
minutes.
No. I'm saying it's really, I get it. It's really valuable. I would not have gotten it then. But what she's saying seems simple, but good. You have to do it, and it is really valuable. It's valuable information. If I could start now again, I would do at least some of it.
Actually, you might have a different perspective.
I was-
Not counter, but
Not
just
counter, but it's kind of like adding on a layer, which is all three of us have worked at law firms, and I personally think that law firm training is invaluable. I decided when I was at Foley, it was called senior counsel, which is basically like junior partner. And I remember I went to the partner I worked for and said, I don't think I want to do this. And he was like, why? You're so great. You'll be perfect. You could like go out there and bring in new business, and you can take over my accounts when I retire, and blah, blah. And, but even though I knew that I ultimately wanted to leave the law firm, the experience and the training is so invaluable. And a lot of law firms are intense places, but so are hospitals if you're a doctor, and so are other, consulting firms if you're a consultant. And I think employing the practices that have been described are so helpful, and like plowing through. I mean, I feel like I probably also plowed through, but you also find, especially when you're an associate, you have your class of associates, and you blow off steam with them, and you develop relationships with them, and it helps relieve pressure.
I had that. That was good.
Yeah, science behind that, social connection.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's all important, and the other thing I was going to say about balance is, and I think a lot of we know this. Balance doesn't necessarily mean 50% work, 50% life. It's finding balance within it all. Finding balance at work, finding balance in your life. Sometimes you're giving more and giving up, and that just is what it is, and it will change and ebb and flow throughout your life. And it's just, I think if you're conscious of it and the awareness part of what it is, like of maintaining whatever it is that will make you feel okay, is what you need to do.
I think a really interesting point was one that Nicole made earlier, which is just to start, right, is really kind of the thing that's most necessary, right? So I think we all sort of think about balance. We've heard about balance, and sometimes you sort of think, okay, when I get to the law firm, then I'm going to put this into play. But you could put it into play today, right? It's just about getting started to build a life and a habit of practice of self-care and of focused and of really kind of thinking about what you want in your life and making space for it.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, I think it's even more valuable in those calmer moments when you're able to kind of practice these things, before you get into the intensity, or if you have calmer moments. The more that you practice, whether it's, different habits, different, behaviors that we were talking about today, the more those are going to be available to you in a pinch. Because when you are highly stressed, your brain is not functioning optimally. You're not going to be able to kind of grab for some of those. And you're also not going to know which ones work for you the best. So the more that you can kind of practice that in the calmer moments, the more you can incorporate it when you really need it.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eden. I'm an engineering student, and I work in the women's health field. And so you mentioned, Eleni, that a lot of your malpractice suits have to do with doctors not believing patients and dismissing them. And I feel like we do so much work to try to do research in women's health and come up with new medical devices. But I guess if doctors are dismissing people so often, I feel like it's quite discouraging. I feel a lot of this stuff won't get used. So I guess my question is, why do you think that still happens so often, and do you see do you see it becoming better sooner and happening less often?
I don't want to make it seem like that the whole medical profession is horrible and dismissing women. I'm really not trying to say that. at all. You just see certain patterns, you know, and there are patterns of, and even with friends in like real life, not in the malpractice world. I know one recently who had some kind of problem, and she was put on an antidepressant. I just think it's like an easy fix to, especially with women, to just think, oh, you know, you're kind of complaining, or it's like hormonal, like we get stereotyped with certain things, and we're just so much more than that. We can control a lot of that stuff. Sometimes there's something real happening. In what I do, younger women sometimes get dismissed because they're not supposed to get sick, and so they're, you know, I'm sure it's nothing, I'm sure you're okay. The Hispanic women get messed up because of language problems and lack of follow-up, which is so maddening to me. There's like a bad report, and they just never get the information. You know, things like that. But I think women are changing, and your generation is changing, and we advocate more for ourselves and don't accept, you know, something that doesn't feel right for us. Like you have a problem and someone says you don't have a problem, you're going to go get another opinion. So what you said, you're in engineering, doing what? Like what?
I do research now to work on preventing preterm birth.
Oh, work on preventing preterm birth. Oh my God, that's exciting. Yeah. No, I mean, don't get discouraged at all. I have a lot of preterm birth cases where it doesn't work out so well, or brain damaged baby cases, not because women are getting dismissed, because fetal monitoring strips are not being read correctly. There's just a lot of things that go wrong that has nothing to do with just like being dismissed. That's one aspect that I see, particularly when it comes to women making like a breast complaint and they don't fit within the person that you think is supposed to have that problem. There's a lot of conversation about, you know, women of color versus not women of color, and there are more deaths we can get off on this, but there's more deaths in childbirth for women of color. Why exactly? Cancers are more aggressive in women of color. Why? Is it the cancer that's more aggressive? Is it not as good treatment? There's a lot of conversation around that. So, you know, and there's a lot of attention being brought to it. There are articles written, there are studies done, so that you're doing, and I'm not just saying this, you're doing good work. Don't get discouraged, because what you're doing, like preterm and how do we fix this or what can we do, is just helping the overall cause, right? Just helping women and women's kids and life be better. So you don't get discouraged because things, you know, if you're meeting me, something's gone wrong. But in most of life, it's not going wrong. Okay, so I have a different, you know, perspective.
So we're at the close of our time. We want to leave time for some networking and enjoying the reception that has sort of been put together. But let me just invite each one of you to maybe just sort of say a few closing kind of remarks.
I'll be very quick. For those of you who are graduating or still in law school, whatever you do, whatever your path, it's a great career, and it's nice to go to a school like this. Like, I'm from Brooklyn. You know, when you're from Brooklyn, you get to say that. I know, Dean, you don't get to say that. And but it's like a badge of honor to say it. It's a cool thing. So your 20s, I think, are for kind of maybe making mistakes or figuring it out. And it's like Shilpa said, I stayed at the same place the whole time. She said she's been to 7 or I think something. You'll find your way. It's such a great background to have, to be a lawyer. You know, to have that education, to have that degree. So good for all of you.
Sure, I will go next. Yeah, I agree. I think even though I am not, you know, currently operating under my legal license, I think there was a lot of value taken out of that into, you know, what I do today and my networking and growing that field. But I think my main takeaway would really be that, you know, your nervous system is not an enemy in this process. It is something that you can harness that energy, especially even that more mobilized energy is actually something we can, when we feel safe, we can really use that to be more productive in our day. So, you know, that sympathetic nervous system is not our enemy. It's something we can harness and use, and we can also kind of use these tools. It's not immutable. Anxiety, all these different things, you can really bring them in, and you can really make a huge difference. it's pretty easy.
And I was just going to close out just on healthcare law. There, like I said, when I was in law school, I had no idea the different kinds of jobs that are out there, but there are so many paths you can take. You can work in the health law department of a law firm. You can work in litigation on the healthcare side. You can work at a hospital or healthcare system. You can work at an insurance company, a pharmaceutical company, a startup. I mean, it is the largest sector in the United States. There's so many jobs, and going back to when I keep saying, just keep networking, and you'll find your way, and take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves.
So let me just invite you to thank our panelists.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Mika.
Thank you all so much. We're going to practice some wellness by getting some drinks and talking. But I wanted to just share one thing, because I actually did go to a conference, a leadership program, and somebody there, an executive coach, gave me my stress toolbox that I have used, that I learned 15 years ago. There's 5 things in it: music, nature, exercise. These are the 2 that people forget: reflection time and a hobby. Okay, bye. See you out there. Thank you to the panelists and to Karen. Thank you so much.